Intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Claudia, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service from February 11th. Leroy, CSD, dismisses claim of racially hostile classroom lesson. NYCLU criticizes district in aftermath of sharecropping activity. Leroy, the New York Civil Liberties Union criticized Leroy Central School District on Monday for its handling of an investigation into a class activity in which students were assigned to play the role of sharecroppers on a plantation. The activity, which was led by a supervised SUNY Geneseo student teacher, took place over 2 days in an 8th grade history class last September and involved students trading pretzels while playing roles such as former slaves, sharecroppers, and plantation owners, according to Tovia Pools, whose daughter was in the class. The activity was designed to demonstrate sharecropping as a form of legalized slavery and the cycle of poverty, according to a letter NYCLU sent Monday to Superintendent Merritt Holley. Pohl's daughter, the only black student in her class, was assigned to play a slave and called Pohl's after class feeling anxious and singled out, she said at the time. Only 2% of Leroy students are black, while 88% are white, according to the New York State Education Department. Pohl's immediately told Holly and an assistant principal of her concerns, but the next day the same activity was repeated, and Pohl's daughter left class early to call her from a bathroom. I'm assuming because of the fact that I reached out to the assistant principal, as well as the superintendent, my daughter said that it was re-explained that the children were the free slaves and the student teacher was the plantation owner, rather than being slaves and a slave master, Pohl's told the Daily News in September. It's different terminology, but the same derogatory meaning. At the time, Holly told her the district would open an investigation into whether the lesson violated the Dignity for All Students Act, a 2012 state law intended to stop bullying and harassment in schools. The district retained Genesee Valley BOCES attorney Vanessa Hanks to run the investigation, while Pohl's sought support from NYCLU. Ultimately, the district determined that the lesson was not in violation of DASA, according to NYCLU's letter. The Daily News has been unable to review the determination or obtain any other information from the district. Holly, Hanks, the student teacher, and the SUNY Geneseo have not responded to repeated interview requests from the Daily News since September, and Holly did not respond to a separate request for comment after the NYCLU's letters released Monday. In the Monday letter, NYCLU attorney Kamara Stokes Hudson said the district's conclusion was cause for serious concern, saying that the activity was objectively offensive and creates a racially hostile environment, and that the school focused on the exact words used in the lesson plan rather than the activity as a whole. Stokes Hudson also referenced state DSA guidelines that were developed after a 2019 incident in which a Watertown teacher assigned black students to play slaves in a slave auction. The district's investigation attempted to exonerate the lesson by focusing on whether specific terms, slave master versus plantation owner, or slaves versus former slaves, were used. Stokes Hudson wrote, "Terminology alone does not determine whether conduct is harmful. Whether students were referred to as slaves or former slaves and sharecroppers, the fundamental problem remains. The teachers assigned students to roles in a racial hierarchy and asked them to simulate an exploitive system that targeted Black Americans." NYCLU asked the district to acknowledge that the activity created a racially hostile environment, prohibits simulations that require students to take on roles in racial hierarchies, provide counseling to affected students, and train all staff on how to approach similar subjects in ways that center the dignity and psychological safety of students of color. For Pohl's daughter, the activity and the investigation brought social fallout in the classroom, too. While Poles says that has since largely been alleviated, she remains frustrated with the way the district handled the investigation and with its failure to respond to Freedom of Information Law requests filed by NYCLU on her behalf. I feel so terrible that my children have to even experience something like this, she said. I've lived in Leroy since I was in nursery school, and I've never had any issues myself with the school district, so this hurts. It hurts. Is that warmth? Above freezing temperatures emerge briefly. Batavia, brown snow and slush may never have looked so good. Above freezing temperatures return to the Glow region Tuesday, ending a streak of snow, storms, and bone-chilling cold, extending approximately back to the New Year's holiday. In most other circumstances, temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 40s might be seasonably cold or even mildly unpleasant, but raindrops and melting snow seemed balmy under the circumstances. Among the benefits, sidewalks began clearing, accumulations shrank, and drivers could exit parking lots and turn on street corners without risking collisions due to the large snowbanks that blocked visibility. Winter's by no means over, but the relative warmth was a break for the area residents. The next few days are expected to be colder but not crippling. High temperatures above 30 degrees are expected Wednesday in Genesee, Livingston, and Orleans counties, with highs in the low 20s in Wyoming County. Low temperatures in the teens may occur Thursday night. A cold westerly flow was expected, build back into the region Tuesday night with snow showers developing, according to the National Weather Service in Buffalo. The snows will focus across the higher terrain east of Lake Erie and across upslope areas east of Lake Ontario. Snowfall amounts of around 1 inch were possible across the higher terrain east of Lake Erie and 1 to 3 inches east of Lake Ontario. Lake-enhanced upslope snows focused southeast and south of Lake Ontario are expected Wednesday through Thursday, NWS forecasters said. Hybrid lake-enhanced upslope snows are Wednesday, with transition to more lake-effect snow showers Wednesday night. A compact area of low pressure may bring accumulating snows late Friday into Saturday, according to the NWS. Although confidence is higher for some measurable snow, confidence remains low with regard to the exact timing and track of the system. The highest probabilities for impact snowfall amounts as of Tuesday afternoon were across the eastern Lake Ontario region, especially the higher terrain of the Tug Hill and western Adirondacks. But a weather track further to the west would bring accumulating snows to most, if not all, of western and north central New York, forecasters said. Sampson announces Wyoming County Sheriff candidacy. Law enforcement veteran is among 2 seeking GOP endorsement. Warsaw. There are now 2 candidates for Wyoming County Sheriff. Chance Sampson, 41, of Wethersfield, has announced he's seeking the Republican nomination. He's an experienced law enforcement officer and Marine Corps veteran. I'm running for sheriff because this county is not just where I live, it is where I raise my family, where my neighbors become friends, and where looking out for one another still matters, Sampson said in a news release. He joins Under Sheriff Colin Regan in seeking the GOP endorsement, with Sheriff David Linder set to retire at year's end. The primary will take place in June. Sampson graduated from the Rural Police Training Academy in 2011, ranking first in his class. He was hired by the Perry Police Department, first as part-time and advancing to full-time status. He was also hired during that time as a part-time officer by Warsaw Village Police and joined the sheriff's office in 2014, where he still serves. As a deputy, I worked at the courthouse before working the road on overnights, afternoons, and my current position on days, he said. I am also an advanced law enforcement rapid response training instructor, which focuses on responses to active shooter situations. Sampson is also a volunteer firefighter with the Bliss Fire Department and has also served previously as an emergency medical technician. I'm someone who believes service starts at home, he said. I've seen firsthand how strong families and close-knit communities are the foundation of public safety. When people trust each other and trust their sheriff's office, everyone is safer. Sampson said his focus as sheriff would be on protecting area families, the deputies, and working side by side with the people of the county, not above or apart from them. He said he believes in common sense law enforcement, accountability, and being present in neighborhoods, schools, and community events. I am a strong supporter of our constitutional rights, he said. I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment. Our forefathers fought for those rights in the Revolutionary War and upheld in the War of 1812. I will keep that fight alive and speak out against infringements to those rights. Sampson said he'll be fiscally responsible and transparent, saying every dollar spent by the sheriff's office comes from hardworking families, and the money should be used wisely with clear results. Asked by the Daily News about an incident in December 2020 in which he was charged with second-degree criminal trespassing, he responded, "I was charged with criminal trespass in the second degree in connection with the custodial exchange of my kids at my ex-wife's home in Farmersville," he said. When the case was resolved a little over a month later, I wasn't convicted of a crime. There was no order of protection issued, and the record was sealed pursuant to the law. Because of that, and for the sake of my kids' privacy, that's all I'd really like to say about it at this point. He continued, "I have come out better and more wise after that incident. I learned a great deal from both sides of the law. One thing I always say and live by is that we are all humans and make mistakes. That's what makes us human." Sampson said his campaign is not about titles or pay. He said it's about keeping kids safe, helping neighbors in times of need, and making sure the county's a place people are proud to call home. As sheriff, he said he'd rather any pay raise go to Wyoming County Veteran Services to better support the area's local veterans. Sampson is a 2002 Pioneer Central School graduate. "I am running to serve," he said. "I've led Marines under pressure, and I've answered fire calls at 2 a.m. for neighbors who needed help. This county raised me, and I believe the sheriff should be someone you trust, someone who shows up, and someone who answers to the people. As a sheriff, I will make the sheriff's office a place people want to work and enjoy coming to work," he said. "A place where their hard work is noticed and appreciated. That's the kind of sheriff I intend to be." City of Batavia sets budget hearing. Proposed spending plan includes estimated tax rate of $8.34 per 1,000. The public will get to comment February 23rd on the city's tentative budget of $37,255,975 with an estimated tax rate of $8.34 per 1,000 of assessed property value. The general fund of $24,569,872 is up $2.19 million or 9% over last year. The tax levy is tentatively at $7.45 million for 2026-27. The public hearing is scheduled for 7 p.m. on February 23rd in the City Council boardroom. The city held its final budget work session Monday evening following the business meeting, partly to go over the proposed budget for the city center fund of $401,696. The city center fund is including $74,000 to replace 2 heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units that were from 1976 when the city center was built. There are 12 HVAC units in the concourse. We are hoping this year to put out an RVP, request for proposals, for someone to do marketing and the promotion of the concourse. Superintendent of Water and Wastewater Bailey Groth said. Council member at large Sammy DeSalvo asked if this is someone who would work for the Department of Public Works. Director of Public Works Tom Phelps said it would be someone who puts in a bid to run them all. We'll go through the different bids and accept whoever has the best idea and who thinks they can generate the most money by renting out the concourse area, he said. Phelps said this would be a bonus for anyone who has a business inside the city center by bringing customers inside to see them all. Council member at large Nichols Lord asked whether planning for concourse events will go through the person or firm hired, or whether the person or group will bring in new business. They'll plan the events, they'll bring in new business, and it still all goes through council, Phelps said. City manager Rachel Tabelski said City Council will still see the applications businesses and organizations submit to have events. They still have to file the insurances, any liquor coverage, things of that nature, because it is still city space. She said it's not an operator agreement similar to Dwyer Stadium or the ice rink. This is more a facilities events firm that can use the space, but they're going to pay. Tabelski said the city doesn't know what the revenue and expense will be. They're going to want to make money doing this, and we're going to want activity in the mall. We don't want to spend any money doing it, so that's our ultimate goal, she said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Co-Starters Program accepting applications. Program's new sessions begin in March in Avon. Dreams, hopes, and ambitions, that's what many prospective business owners start with. That was the case for Jessie Held long before starting her community wellness business in Caledonia. The seed was planted nearly a decade ago, said Held, owner of Magic Held Here, which was recently named the most promising new enterprise of 2025 by the Livingston County Area Chamber of Commerce. Held wanted a country house with space to host a yoga studio, retreats, and workshops as early as 2015, but when that did not become available, she continued to teach yoga and dream. Eventually, when the timing was right, she sought help at the Livingston County Economic Development Office and enrolled in its 10-week course called Co-Starters. Co-Starters helped me understand my business as a business. While my passion lies in the creative and wellness side, including art, yoga, branding, and events, the program forced me to look at the numbers, how to cover costs, how to value my time, and how to shift from a passion to a professional enterprise. The LCED office is offering another round of its 10-week course on Monday mornings from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Avon Town Hall, Genesee Street, from March 16th to May 18th. Cost for the course is typically $600, but Grow Live Company is making the course available to participants for only $100 per person. Interested individuals must apply to participate as the class size is limited to 12. Priority for enrollment will be given to Livingston County businesses and/or residents, and applications are due February 16th. Held will be co-facilitating the course with the Deputy Director of Economic Development, Maureen Wheeler. She shared with me that one of her goals this year was to get more involved in the community, and she mentioned specifically wanting to speak at an event or facilitate an event, said Wheeler. So we started brainstorming together and thought this would be a great match, Wheeler said. Held took the class in 2024, and then she went on to win the Dream of 8 competition, a retail business plan competition that encourages entrepreneurs to compete for the chance to open a storefront and earn a business startup package. I think it's great that the students will get to hear from an existing business owner who has gone through this process very recently and can talk about the hurdles that she ran into and the solutions she came up with, Wheeler said. I think that'll be really beneficial for them, said Wheeler. I am so excited about this session because my main goal as a co-facilitator is to bridge the gap between the big visionary thinking we all love and the actual practical execution it takes to get there, Held said. Both Held and Wheeler are certified instructors for the Co-Starters program. The curriculum is brilliant because it starts with the who and the why. It forced me to get clear on who my customer was and what specific problem I am solving for them. For me, that is providing an intimate atmosphere for connection, whether through yoga, women's circles, or community events, Held said. Many local entrepreneurs have gone through the program. Last year, there were 56 participants, plus another 20 to 30 in 2024, said Wheeler. Businesses such as Cedar, House Wellness in Geneseo, Tees on Genesee and Avon, and Dansville Gymnastics have all participated in the program. This year, however, there are some changes. For one, the class is no longer tied to grant funding. It is a standalone course. But the course will also be different this year because Wheeler wants to emphasize the process of adapting a business to a changing environment through inquiry and experimentation. This curriculum is much more fast-paced and it's all about testing assumptions. We start off right away putting their assumptions down on paper, then talking to potential customers to see if they are headed down the right path. And if they need to pivot, Wheeler said, we really are teaching them that process so that they can use it over and over again to continue moving their business in a successful direction, she said. Wheeler also emphasized that participants will get to learn from each other, not just her and Held. There will also be guest speakers at each session tailored to the kinds of businesses that the participants want to start. And Wheeler has plans to take enrollees to visit some of the businesses in the county as well. We're really building this entrepreneur ecosystem, and they are networking with each other and continuing to make partnerships, Wheeler said. The Economic Development Office can also help with potential financing, business locations, and marketing efforts. The biggest part of it is on them to get out and talk to customers. One day, one in the class, we will talk about how important those customer conversations are. It's actually something we track over the course of the 10 weeks, Wheeler said. Wheeler says that they will also encourage entrepreneurs to start small. If they can pop up at a farmer's market or pop at a festival or an event or offer something through social media just to test that product, test that service, and make new customer connections, that's the best way to go, Wheeler said. And there are cases, and we consider this a success as well, if somebody takes the class and realizes, I don't want to start a business, or they start small and realize it isn't for them. They didn't invest so much up front to realize that. So that's the goal too, that they don't go into debt testing this out, said Wheeler. That smart and small start is what got Held's business off the ground. Her first studio space was in a renovated outbuilding that was once a chicken coop. It has allowed me to grow a business organically while remaining a stay-at-home mom first. I'm in control of my schedule and my events, and I know that as my children grow, Magic Held here will grow right alongside them, Held said. Besides the renovated coop studio, Magic Held here also hosts a 23-foot bell tent called Avalon for events, as well as through pop-up partnerships, including yoga sessions in the Salt Cave at Native Wellness and Aesthetics, outdoor classes at Genesee Valley Lavender Farms, and an annual Brooms and Brews event at Strange Design Public House. The best advice I can give any entrepreneur is to look at the resources already at your fingertips. Start with your circle, your friends, your family, and industry peers. The more information you gather and the more time you dedicate to craft, the faster you'll gain clarity on what you truly want your business to be. Held said, once that vision is clear, don't hold back, she said. Tap into every available resource to bring it to life. For more information about the Livingston County Economic Development and the Co-Starters Program, visit www.growlivco.com. Westmeyer gets 7th prison term. Warsaw man has spent nearly 16 years in state custody. A Warsaw man will serve his 7th state prison sentence after he was sentenced last week in Wyoming County Court. Ryan C. Westermeyer, age 50, was sentenced to 3 years in prison with 5 years of post-release supervision. Westmeyer pleaded guilty in November and admitted assaulting a woman shortly after his release from prison in June. He has 11 previous felony convictions and has served 6 state prison terms, including his last stint when he violated parole, was returned to prison and released June 25th. Westermeyer has an extensive criminal history and has served prison terms dating back to 1998 when he served about 2 years for first-degree sexual abuse. Since 1998, he has been in prison about 16 years, including return trips after violating parole. His longest prison term came in 2012 when he was sentenced to 5 to 11 years in prison after he was convicted of drug sales, possessing a forged instrument, and attempted robbery of a bank in East Aurora. He also was later convicted while in prison of promoting prison contraband after his wife tried to smuggle drugs to him in prison just 4 months after he was committed. Also in county court, Jason E. Hoffman, age 55, of Gainesville, pleaded guilty to first-degree criminal sexual act, a Class B felony punishable by up to 25 years in state prison. He had been arrested in August after an investigation into sex offenses. No other details were provided. Kendall R. Nodes, Jr., age 37, of Warsaw, was sentenced to 1 to 3 years in prison for aggravated family offense. The sentence is to be served concurrent to one he is serving now for the same conviction. Rodney Nelson, age 64, of Genesee Falls, pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree criminal possession of a weapon and third-degree criminal possession of a controlled substance. He is to be sentenced April 16th. Uninhibited History returns at Go Art. The Uninhibited History lecture series is returning to Go Art after a weather-related hiatus. Promising a view of history that is unvarnished, unconventional, and decidedly unromantic, the series will be hosted by author, historian, and storyteller Derek D. Maxfield and others, Go Art, officials said in a news release. The monthly lectures will take place at 6:30 p.m. Thursdays in Tavern 2.0.1 at Go Art on 201 East Main Street. The schedule includes February 12th, Thomas Paine, Common Sense and the Coming of American Independence, presented by Derek Maxfield. March 12th, Scapegoat of Andersonville, the trial of Henry Wurz and the Victorian obsession with true crime, presented by Jess Maxfield. April 19th, Dr. Benjamin Rush, Forgotten Founding Father, presented by Derek Maxfield. May 7th, Consent of the Governed, 250 Years of Voting in America, presented by Dr. Terry Ann Shute. Utilities warn of rise in sophisticated scams, Binghamton. Utility customers are being warned about an increase in sophisticated scams. Scammers are using aggressive methods to get customers to give up personal information, officials from New York State Electric and Gas and Rochester Gas and Electric officials said in a news release. Scammers often pose as utility representatives to trick customers into revealing personal information. They may visit homes or businesses or sending fraudulent emails. Customers are encouraged to remain vigilant against tactics such as disconnection threats, meter payment scams, overpayment scams, and door-to-door imposters. NYSEG and RG&E will never ask a person to email any personal information such as payment and financial details on their home address, send your programs to install on your computer, terminate a customer service without providing notice for non-payment, perform shutoffs during hours when our customer contact center is closed, go door-to-door asking to see customer bills. The two companies may contact customers by phone, email, or text to inform them about services, alerts, or activities in the area while respecting privacy and data protection laws. Customers are encouraged to avoid clicking on links or downloading attachments from unknown sources. NYSEG and RG&E representatives and contractors always carry company-issued photo identification and will always provide it when asked. The companies will never demand payment from prepaid cards or green dot cards. If a person is or are uncertain of the identity of the caller or a visitor at their door, they should contact NYSEG at 1-800-572-1111 or RG&E at 1-800-743-2110 immediately. Burnt property yields felony charge. Deputies say Francis set fire to ex-girlfriend's belongings. A Castile man was charged January 25th after a series of incidents which included setting fire to his former girlfriend's property, Wyoming County Sheriff's deputies said. Deputies were asked to conduct a welfare check at Old Orchard Drive residence after Jacob Francis, age 26, contacted his ex-girlfriend after retrieving her property. He was allegedly damaging the property at the time. A deputy arrived on scene to find Francis wasn't present, but several of the women's items had allegedly been set on fire outside the residence. In the meantime, Wyoming County emergency dispatchers had received another 911 call while deputies were approaching the residence. The caller said Francis was at an address on Cotton Road in Gainesville, yelling at and threatening the ex-girlfriend as she tried to leave. Deputies arrived to find Francis had allegedly fled the scene. They remained on location to talk to the 911 caller. State police located Francis moments later driving on Hermitage Road in Orangeville. It was determined his driver's license was revoked, and a traffic stop was conducted. Francis was taken into custody. He was charged with felony third-degree criminal mischief, second-degree aggravated licensed operation, driving an uninspected vehicle in unlicensed operation. Francis was released to appear in Castile Town Court at a later date. Students assist Creek's restoration. G.V. Bosey students working on Black Creek project. Genesee Valley BOCES conservation students are gaining meaningful hands-on experience while making a difference in their community. Under the guidance of teacher Jerry Kranja at the Batavia Career and Technical Education Center, students are teaming up with Genesee County Park and Forest to support a restoration project and forest along Black Creek, Genesee Valley BOCES officials said in a news release. Their work is helping strengthen the natural environment while building career-ready conservation skills. The work is part of a larger effort focused on restoring riparian habitat, the important strip of land and vegetation along the edges of streams and waterways, officials said. Healthy riparian areas play a major role in protecting water quality and supporting wildlife, and this project is designed to improve the long-term health of the creek and surrounding ecosystem through targeted restoration and stewardship. The project began this past autumn, bringing students and partners together to begin planning and learning about the work ahead. The event welcomed 8 partner organizations and included site tours, giving students the opportunity to see the project area firsthand and understand why Black Creek is an important location for restoration work and long-term environmental monitoring. As part of the project, students are learning what it takes to restore and protect a stream corridor in a way that benefits both the environment and the community. Restoration efforts along Black Creek will include field-based learning experiences that connect directly to conservation careers, giving students a chance to explore the work done by environmental professionals and the impact it has on local habitats. Projects like this also help students see the value of protecting natural resources upstream. Even smaller waterways like Black Creek contribute to the overall health of larger watersheds, meaning improvements made locally can have positive impacts beyond the immediate project site. The project will continue into the spring when fieldwork, planting, and monitoring are expected to increase. Students will remain involved as restoring activities expand, giving them an even stronger connection to the work and the opportunity to see progress over time. Genesee Valley BOCES is proud of the conservation students for the effort they are putting into this important work. Their participation reflects the power of career and technical education, connecting students with real community partners, real projects, and real career exploration while supporting environmental stewardship, the officials said. This project is supported by an agreement with Cornell University in partnership with New York Sea Grant. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. AI has turned Bernie and DeSantis into unlikely allies. Bernie Sanders and Ron DeSantis don't agree on much, but the data center boom is a rare exception. Vermont's Democratic Socialist senator and Florida's right-wing governor want to slam the brakes on the hundreds of resource-intensive new facilities springing up across the country to power the artificial intelligence industry. And both point to profits, not the public good, as the real factor motivating the boom. In many ways, the convergence was inevitable. Public wariness about the data center industry is growing, and politicians could no longer ignore the outcry. Public skepticism of AI is also ubiquitous. Merriam-Webster chose slop as its 2025 word of the year because at the same time AI is enabling telemedicine and driving cars, it's also spreading fake news, non-consensual nudified images, and synthetic propaganda. So when two politicians representing two ideological extremes start sounding alike, maybe it's time to listen. In December, DeSantis convened a roundtable discussion to highlight the growing threat of AI. What we don't want to do is to be subsidizing or put a thumb on the scale for technologies that are going to supplant the human experience, he said. He called for an artificial intelligence bill of rights to safeguard data privacy, parental controls, and consumer protections, and he backed legislation that requires data centers to pay the full cost of their energy and water use and allows local communities to stop data center construction that doesn't mesh with their growth plans. You should not have to pay one dime more in utility costs, water, power, any of this stuff, because these are some of the most wealthy companies in the history of humanity, he argued. DeSantis had convened the roundtable just days after the Trump administration issued an executive order seeking to limit state-level AI regulations, warning that a patchwork of 50 different regulatory regimes could hinder U.S. competitiveness with China. But DeSantis challenged Trump's justification for the data center expansion, arguing that the tech industry is motivated to accelerate AI growth with its fake songs and fake videos because it is driven primarily by profits. Their goal is not to beat China, he said. DeSantis' comments were remarkably similar to those made by Sanders just weeks before. Sanders had released a report that raised questions about the industry's impact on American jobs, the economy, and young people. It concluded technology can and should improve the lives of working people, but it will not happen if decisions are made in boardrooms by billionaires who only care about short-term profits. Sanders had also joined environmentalists and called for Congress to pass a moratorium on building new data centers. I think you've got to slow this process down. He said both are right. The bipartisan distrust of this industry gives politicians a rare leverage point to push back against the Trump-aligned tech bros and start asking some serious questions about the AI arms race. What is the goal? How much generative AI is necessary? Does America really need AI-generated slop? And isn't it time to put some quality controls on these resource-consuming giants? For years, the nation's tech companies have gone about signing non-disclosure agreements and lobbying elected officials to build data centers to power their AI technology with little regard for the cost and impact on the public. But when the nonstop low-frequency hums from the buildings started to annoy people in neighboring residential communities, when electric bills started to rise for homeowners and small businesses, and when local water resources started to strain from the cooling demands of the massive computers, public protests got louder. Politicians started getting voted out of office, and the industry started to wise up. To say data centers are unpopular right now is probably an understatement, to say the least. Dan D'Orio, Vice President of State Policy for the Data Center Coalition, told a Florida Legislative Committee in December. D'Orio represents tech giants like Meta, Alphabet, and Amazon Web Services and is making the rounds to state houses across the country, as lawmakers file bills to impose new rules on the companies. Arizona, Georgia, Maryland, and Michigan legislators are considering bills to repeal data center tax incentives. Georgia, Florida, Michigan, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Arizona are advancing bills to prohibit data centers from entering into non-disclosure agreements that hide details of the development plans from the public. 11 states are considering legislation to require utility regulators to develop a new rate class so that data centers foot the bill for their power needs. And lawmakers in Georgia, Oklahoma, Vermont, and Virginia have proposed moratoriums on new data center construction. But politicians don't move as fast as tech companies, and in many ways the industry is already several steps ahead of them. At hearings before Florida legislators, data center developers testified that many companies are bypassing their water challenges by moving to cooling systems that use closed-loop water technology to reduce massive water consumption. But because demand isn't slowing for the build-out of centers that use 500 megawatts or more of energy a day, enough to power a mid-sized city, getting sufficient energy supplied in a timely manner, regardless of the environmental implications, is now the industry priority, according to a report last month from industry-focused Data Center Frontier. Plans are emerging in Florida, for example, to build self-sufficient energy centers using turbines that burn greenhouse gas-emitting natural gas. Developers said the industry is also working on developing small, modular nuclear reactions to power data centers. NPR reported recently that the Trump administration has secretly rewritten environmental safety and security rules to allow for development of the experimental reactors. The energy appetite is insatiable, according to Bloomberg. NEF data centers' energy demand will triple in a decade from 34.7 gigawatts in 2024 to 106 gigawatts by 2035. That's the equivalent of powering more than 80 million homes. In many ways, states created this monster, lured by the economic development potential of the tech industry. State and local governments for years have offered tax breaks to the industry without managing the impact that they would have on their energy grid, especially during peak demand. For his part, DeSantis has hardly been consistent on this issue. Last June, he signed a major tax relief bill that extended the deadline to apply for Florida's tax credit for data centers from 2027 to 2037. Even as he says he wants to slow data center development in his state, he's giving the industry a tax break to encourage it. It's classic hypocrisy. Perhaps DeSantis now sees the error of his ways. A version of his bill giving local communities control of their data center fate is moving through the Florida legislature, although it is inexplicably giving data centers a one-year exemption from public record requirements. Hopefully other state and local officials will also listen to the public outcry, put the brakes on data centers, and take a more measured path forward. "They ignored you" is now an easy campaign slogan. Even AI could write it. Insurrection Act vulnerable to abuse. Even if the administration has temporarily backed off threats to invoke the Insurrection Act to quell protests in Minnesota, the idea will come up again. That's partly because the power which would allow the president to use active duty troops to conduct domestic law enforcement is dangerously vulnerable to abuse. What's known as the Insurrection Act is actually a set of statutes enacted by Congress between 1792 and 1871. Under certain conditions, they allow the president to circumvent the Posse Comitatus Act injunction against using the military for civilian law enforcement, say if asked by a state for help in suppressing unrest, or if the White House deems that any insurrection or violence is preventing the exercise of federal laws. In the continental U.S., the act was invoked most recently in 1992 to restore order during the Los Angeles riots, and before that to enforce desegregation and civil rights laws in the 1960s. Examples are so rare, largely because presidents or their cabinet members have shown restraint. The triggers for the law's employment are remarkably broad and vague. They could theoretically allow the White House to call up the 82nd Airborne Division if two individuals were impeding its deportation campaign. Nothing in the act requires that it be treated as a last resort. It has no provisions for congressional or judicial review. While a 1964 Justice Department memo does narrow its focus, the current administration could simply revise that guidance. Stronger guardrails would be in everyone's interest. The military isn't trained for these kinds of missions. In one incident in 1992, when cops responding to a domestic violence incident asked Marines for cover, the troops responded by riddling the home with more than 200 bullets. Even those inclined to agree with the administration's description of protesters as insurrectionists should worry about lowering the bar for a future president to exploit such sprawling powers. Former officials from both parties have been calling for reform for years. While Congress can debate specific language, the broad principles are clear. The triggers for invoking the act should be narrowed so that it's clearly a tool of last resort and updated to replace archaic and unclear terms. The president should consult with state officials first and explain the decision to Congress. Any deployment should be strictly time-limited. Extensions should require congressional authorization. Bills have been introduced to reform the act as recently as last summer. While achieving a veto-proof majority is unlikely under current conditions, Congress has shown itself willing to clarify other antiquated laws in the recent past. An open debate could usefully expose these issues to public scrutiny and remind the administration how controversial and counterproductive deploying the military would be. No one is likely to welcome reform more than the troops themselves, the vast majority of whom have no interest in fighting partisan battles and being distracted from the mission of defending the U.S. against external enemies. If Congress wants to prioritize U.S. security, it will shield them from that possibility. Thought for the day: the only thing more powerful than hate is love. Bad Bunny. Letter to the editor. ICE needs to leave Minnesota. Editor. Regarding the article, administration removed 700 agents from Minnesota, it is not enough. With approximately 2,300 agents still on the ground with national impunity, 2,000 plus more than customary, ICE continues to terrorize the people of Minnesota, rounding up people under poorly disguised racism, with quotas offering a substantial monetary incentive. Ironically, 4 indigenous men of the Oglala Sioux tribe were detained in Minneapolis. ICE has stopped people at gunpoint and torn them from their vehicles. ICE agents have been captured on video chasing peaceful, unarmed protesters with guns out using tear gas and sound grenades. Border Czar Tom Homan has stated that he has not found one ICE officer guilty of anything inappropriate. Homan blames the vast increase of ICE forces on Minnesota residents for impeding agents from performing their job, threatening to arrest all who do not comply. 158 detainments and several prosecutions have resulted from ICE's judgment calls as to what is acceptable protest versus hateful rhetoric. Agents threatened to pepper spray reporters protected under the First Amendment freedom of the press, yet Homan believes that ICE has done an effective job, thus far calling it a success. Removing 700 agents is Trump's pathetic way of trying to win back supporters after the obvious murder of Alex Preddy, who he and his administration have claimed was an agitator, an insurrectionist, and a domestic terrorist. Deputy Director Homan, it's time to de-ice Minnesota. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Ask the Pediatrician. Playing outside in winter. Tips to keep kids warm and safe. Heading outside for some winter fun, like sledding, throwing snowballs, or ice skating, can be a surefire cure for cabin fever. It's also a great way for kids to get the 60 minutes of daily exercise they need. Just be sure your child is dressed right and know when it's time to come in and warm up. Families can also prevent winter-related injuries, whether that means supervising a sledding expedition or helping keep children off thin ice. Here are some tips on keeping children safe. Cold weather. Children are more at risk from cold outdoor temperatures than adults because their bodies are smaller. They lose heat more quickly. Especially if they are having fun, they may not realize how cold they are and may be less likely to come inside when they're getting too cold. To prevent frostbite and hypothermia, make sure the temperature, including how it feels with the wind chill, is above minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, exposed skin begins to freeze within minutes. Wearing several thin layers of clothing will help keep kids warm and dry. Insulated boots, mittens, or gloves, and a hat are also essential. Make sure children change out of any wet clothes right away. To make sure children aren't exposed for too long, set reasonable limits on the amount of time spent playing outside to prevent hypothermia and frostbite. Make sure kids have a place to go for regular indoor breaks to warm up, and reward them with a healthy and delicious snack. Winter activities. Building snow forts and snow tunnels require supervision in case of a collapse. Supervision also ensures openings are available for exiting. If the snow fort or tunnel collapses, a supervising individual is available to extricate children who may get trapped inside. When building the fort, avoid the use of sharp tools. Ice skating is another fun winter activity that can prove hazardous. Allow children to skate only on approved frozen surfaces that have been checked to ensure the ice is thick enough. Check for signs posted by local police or recreation departments, or call your local police department to find out which areas have been approved. Be sure to advise your child to skate in the same direction as the crowd and avoid darting across the ice, and to never skate alone. It's also prudent to make sure children aren't eating or chewing gum while skating, due to the choking hazard. Parents with further concerns can elect to have their child wear a helmet, knee pads, and elbow pads. This can be especially helpful while learning to skate, to keep them safe from serious head injury or broken bones. Supervised sledding is another fantastic outdoor recreation idea, but safety steps should be taken to ensure sledders are away from large objects such as vehicles or trees that could be crashed into. Equipment safety is important as well. Sleds should be free of sharp corners or edges with well-lubricated steering mechanisms. Sleds with steering capabilities are safer than simple discs or inner tubes that don't allow for much control. Safety padding and helmets should be used to prevent serious injury, and trusted adults should always be watching. Safety can look very similar. When it comes to skiing or snowboarding, adult supervision is always encouraged, on top of general safety equipment such as helmets and goggles that are also tested to fit and ensure they work properly. Additionally, children should be taught how to engage in either sport before taking to the slopes, ideally by a qualified instructor in a program designed for children. If their school offers a ski or snowboard club, this could be a good first step to getting them comfortable. Snowmobiling has its own host of dangers, and as such, the AAP recommends that children under age 16 not operate snowmobiles. Just like they can't operate a car, and that children under age 6 never ride on snowmobiles, sledding or skiing with a snowmobile is not safe or recommended. Unusual safety precautions such as helmet and goggle wearing should be enforced. Traveling at safe speeds and only during daylight hours on marked trails is also recommended. For more information, go to healthychildren.org. Does strep throat go away on its own? Strep throat is caused by a group A streptococcus bacteria which infects the throat and tonsils. Unlike most sore throats, which are viral, strep throat is a bacterial infection. It is highly contagious and spreads through close contact, including coughing, sneezing, or sharing food, drinks, or utensils. Strep throat symptoms to watch for. Common signs of strep throat include sudden sore throat, pain when swallowing, fever, swollen lymph nodes in the neck, red inflamed tonsils, sometimes with white patches or streaks, headache or stomach pain. If you or your child notice these symptoms, it is a good idea to get a strep test sooner than later. How is strep different for kids? Children and adults experience many of the same symptoms of strep throat and are generally recommended the same treatment. However, children between 3 and 15 years old are much more susceptible to getting strep throat than infants or adults over age 45. Can strep throat go away on its own? Your body does make antibodies to fight off strep germs, but it clears the infection much more effectively when antibiotics are added, says Neil Herenderine, MD, MS, pediatrician at Golisano Children's Hospital. Without treatment, strep throat doesn't just linger, it can lead to complications. Strep can cause abscesses in the throat, tonsils, or lymph nodes, and certain strains may lead to rheumatic fever, which can damage the heart, joints, or kidneys, says Dr. Herendine. Treatment for strep throat, antibiotics. Antibiotics are the standard treatment for strep throat. With antibiotics, symptoms often improve with 1 to 3 days, and the infection is far less likely to spread or cause serious complications. It's important to complete the full course of medication even if symptoms improve quickly, because children are at higher risk for complications. Prompt testing and treatment are especially important. At-home symptom relief, over-the-counter medication, pain relievers such as acetaminophen or ibuprofen can help manage aches, pain, and fever. Hydration, drink plenty of water to soothe your throat and prevent dehydration. Warm liquids, tea, broth, or warm water can help ease discomfort. Rest, sleep, and quiet activities support your immune system in fighting infection. Humidifiers, adding moisture to the air, can reduce throat irritation. Strep throat can appear suddenly and be uncomfortable, but with timely treatment, recovery is typically quick and complications are rare. Immigration officials grilled over U.S. citizen deaths. Agency leaders testify during oversight hearing. The leaders of the agencies enforcing President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown faced tough questioning on Capitol Hill on Tuesday, with one Democratic lawmaker asking the head of ICE if he would apologize to the families of the 2 U.S. citizens killed by federal agents and called domestic terrorists by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Todd Lyons, acting head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, declined to apologize to the families of Renee Good and Alex Preddy during the hearing, but said he welcomed the opportunity to speak to Good's family in private. "I'm not going to speak to any ongoing investigation," Lyons said. For the first time since the federal operation in Minneapolis led to the deaths of Good and Preddy, the heads of 3 immigration agencies testified before the House Homeland Security Committee. Along with Lyons, the other witnesses were Joseph Edlow, Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and Rodney Scott, Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Their agencies fall under the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats and some Republicans have called for increased oversight of the Trump administration's immigration operations since the shootings last month of Good and Preddy, both 37, by federal agents. In the aftermath of the shootings, the administration replaced Gregory Bovino, a Border Patrol officer who led the charge in Minneapolis, with Border Policy Advisor Tom Homan, a former ICE official. Officials also withdrew some agents and began requiring those in Minneapolis to wear body cameras. We must take the temperature down and look at the record of enforcement actions through rational eyes, said the committee's chair, Rep. Andrew Garbarino R. from NY. Garbarino asked for commitment from the ICE and CBP leaders to give the committee the full reports, the findings of the investigations into the shootings of Good and Preddy once those conclude. Scott and Lyons agreed. Scott, the CBP commissioner, told the committee members that officers face an unprecedented increase in attacks by people who interfere with law enforcement action. He said these actions are coordinated and well funded. This is not peaceful protest, he said. Lyons, the ICE leader, told lawmakers that his agency has removed more than 475,000 people from the U.S. and conducted nearly 379,000 arrests under President Donald Trump returned to the White House. He said the agency has hired more than 12,000 officials and agents. He condemned so-called sanctuary jurisdictions, which limit the collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE, as well as the rhetoric from public officials against ICE. Lyons testified that 3,000 out of 13,000 ICE agents wear body cameras. Scott estimated that about 10,000 of 20,000 Border Patrol agents wear cameras, adding that we're building that program out. The agency heads faced intense questioning from Democrats on the committee, including those from California. Rep. Eric Swalwell from California asked Lyons about his comment last year that the deportation process should work like Amazon Prime but with human beings. Lyons said the comment had been taken out of context. I did say that we need to be more efficient when it comes to removing individuals from the United States because ICE doesn't detain people punitively. We detain to remove, he said. I don't want to see people in custody. Well, speaking of human beings, how many times has Amazon Prime shot a nurse? 10 times in the back, Swalwell responded. Swalwell asked how many agents have been fired for their conduct under Lyons' leadership. Lyons said he would get that data. Can you tell us if at least, God, I hope at least one person has been fired for their conduct since these operations have begun? Swalwell asked. Lyons said he wouldn't talk about personnel. Swalwell was the one who asked Lyons if he would apologize to the families of Good and Preddy. He also asked if Lyons would resign from ICE. Lyons declined. Rep. Lou Carrera from California questioned Lyons about whether carrying a U.S. passport is enough for people to avoid being detained or deported. An October report by ProPublica identified more than 170 instances of U.S. citizens who were detained at raids or protests. Lyons said U.S. citizens shouldn't feel the need to carry their passports. No American citizen will be arrested for being an American citizen, Lyons said. Correa said a number of U.S. citizens in his district, which is a majority of Latino, have been detained, some for several days. Lyons said he wasn't aware of any cases of detained American citizens. Are you surveilling U.S. citizens today? Correa asked. Lyons said there's no database for protesters. I can assure you there is no database that's tracking down citizens, he said. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News. We read from Batavia Daily News every Saturday at 9 a.m. Your reader has been Claudia, and I thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the East Aurora Advertiser. At 11 o'clock, we have the Niagara Gazette. And at noon, we have the Dunkirk Observer. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,